event. In addition to that as well, we do encourage people to turn on the camera so the event could be as engaging as possible. Today's event will be hosted by Jeremy Mills, who is a Black Valley mentor and also an experienced product designer. And he'll be running us through the whiteboard challenge, and I'll let him explain what that is in a sec. But it's a really key tool for designers, and it's something that some designers will be asked to do at an interview. So we felt it would be a great idea to run through that today. Over to you, Jeremy.
All right. What's up, everybody? Are you recording?
Yes, I am. Thank you
Okay,
first.
cool. Oh, awesome. Right on. All right, cool. So, everybody, welcome. I'm excited to have you all here today. So we're going to go through the whiteboard challenge today. And before I do that, where is the chat? Oh, here it is. Oh, it's hidden behind the More menu. I'm going to post this in the chat. It's a link to the Miro board that I'm presenting right now. And while I'm presenting, if you guys want to click into there, hop in. We're gonna go through a whiteboard challenge together. And so this board is a presentation, but it's also a template for us to just sort of get in there. It's got some sticky notes and things like that. And it's got the challenge. And so we're going to go through one together. How does that sound? A little bit about me. My name's Jeremy. Like I said, I'm a designer. I've been doing this for a long time now. I started out doing freelance, and so I worked at a startup for a little bit. And now I'm at GE Aviation as an experienced architect, which sounds really fancy, but it just means I basically meet with people all day and try to do more strategy. So I don't do a ton of design anymore, but I do a lot of interviews. And, we do these whiteboard challenges as part of our interviewing process. A lot of companies do. And, the trick here is to just understand the process, get familiar with it. And the more you know, the more you practice, the less terrifying this is. So before we start, I don't know how to do a virtual show of hands, but maybe just in the chat, if you guys want to post, I'd love to know how many people have done a whiteboard challenge before, or if anybody is completely unfamiliar with this. Just post it in the chat. I'm curious to see what everybody here thinks. Completely new. Cool. So we got a couple people. So we're going to start over basically from scratch. As if you have no idea what this is, and that's the whole point of this, right? All right, so whiteboard challenge. Let's see, just a little bit about me. So my name's Jeremy, obviously. We talked about that. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, I'm in present mode. Okay, so I got to do that. All right, so here's what we're going to do today. We're going to go over what a whiteboard challenge is. We're going to talk about why they're important. We're going to talk about how to prepare, understand the process a little bit, some common mistakes. We'll do some Q&A. And then we are going to hop into a whiteboard challenge. So this is going to take a little bit of time. We're going to give ourselves about an hour, maybe a little bit less, depending on how much time we have. We'll take a break in between the presentation and the challenge itself. Challenge will be about an hour. We'll go through it. Don't worry. You guys are going to do great, I promise. All right. So whiteboard challenge. So what is it? Well, it's basically a simple prompt. It gives the interviewer a little bit of an insight into your abilities as a UX designer. We want to understand how you think. How do you interact with the team? Will you be a good fit for our team, personality-wise, right? We're looking for stuff like that. I want to know what your process is. And keep in mind, UX design role is very different from a UI design role or a visual design role, right? We're not necessarily concerned with screens, color, topography, things like that. Those are very important, obviously. But for a UX designer, our main job at the end of the day is to solve a problem, okay? Now, if you guys are familiar with groups like the Nielsen-Norman Group, Jacob Nielsen, Don Norman, they've been doing this for a really long time, kind of UX before UX was even a thing, really. And one of the things that they've found through their research is that the most usable is not always the prettiest, right? Think about, HTML, white text, or white background, black text, blue hyperlink with an underline. Everybody knows what that is, right? When you start to change the color and you make it prettier, quote unquote prettier, it becomes less usable. Is that stylized text? Is it a header? I don't know anymore. Doesn't look like a hyperlink. So as a UX designer, again, our job is not to be visual designers necessarily. That's certainly part of it. But the main role is for us to solve a problem. And the whiteboard challenge gives us a design prompt. And the whiteboard challenge is a way for the interviewer to understand your processes and your abilities as a UX designer to solve those problems, okay? That's really what we're trying to do here. So the critical thing here is don't overthink it, right? Everybody on this, show of hands, who here is like totally new to UX design, or who's got some experience at least doing UX design, taking a boot camp or school, or at least done, read books or something. If you've been doing UX design for any amount of time, you've got a process in your head, right? If someone were to come to you, freelance project, and ask you to start doing work, you've probably got some process that you follow already. That's great. All we're doing now is compressing that process into an hour, all right? So you've got a process. We just need to follow it relatively quickly, okay? We're going to make some assumptions and other things, skip some steps. But for the most part, this is already what we do. We're just compressing it into an hour. So this is my process. Some people have different processes. This is my process. And again, you're free to take this, iterate on it, make it better. I'm sure other people have different ideas than me. Compare other designs to or other processes to what you see here and see what works better for you. But this is what I do. First thing, contextualize. I want to understand the larger system that this problem exists in, okay? What are our constraints? Who would our users be? Am I building an Android app? Am I building a desktop app? Am I building a web app? Does it need to be responsive? Am I, building a physical thing or a digital thing? Who are my users? What are their expectations, needs, wants, etc.? And we start to understand the context, right? Then we want to really define the problem, right? What is the problem that you're asking me to solve, right? We ask why a bunch maybe, right? I need this thing. Well, why? Because of this. Well, why is that? Because of this. Well, why is that, right? And then you really dig down deep. Like you might find the problem is that nobody has access to this thing, or the resources available are very low, and so we need to do something, or whatever that problem is. That's what we want to define. We want to define what those problems are. Now, when I give you a prompt, there could be one problem. There might be multiple problems. Your job here is to just figure out what those problems are, right? The next thing we want to ideate. We want to go through these things and we say, like, how might we solve this? How might we solve that? And we want to just throw all those ideas out there, all those potential solutions, right? How might we make finding that thing easier? How might we increase the number of something or others, or decrease the time spent, whatever, right? So we want to come up with all those potential solutions. Think of each one of those how might we's as maybe a feature in an app, perhaps, right? Now, the next step, because this is a whiteboard challenge, we need to draw some stuff at some point. We want to take one of those ideas and start to refine it. This is where we'll start to do some designs, okay? I should have started there. We'll just start here. So we contextualize the environment, list out the facts, talked about that, define the problem, list out the potential problems. We want to start to list out the solutions, right? How might we do this? Okay. And then we want to refine our best ideas. So take one of those ideas that we started to throw out there and just pick one. We have an hour. We're not going to be able to do everything. Let's just pick one of them. And we can start to do some simple, some high-level designs on the whiteboard, low fidelity. We just want to get some simple ideas across. We don't want to get too far in the weeds, right? So think about, like, if you're designing a form, you don't need to write out every form field. You don't need to write out the label, name, last name, first name, whatever. If you're designing a bigger process, you don't want to get stuck on the login screen, for instance, right? You want to make sure that you're not getting too far into the weeds, keeping this very high level, all right? Then the last step, we want to start to summarize our solution. Why did we make the decisions that we made? We want to restate whatever assumptions, right? We made the assumption that our users are, 5 years old, right? Why? Why do we make that assumption? We want to talk about how we plan on validating it, right? What are some success metrics? Like, we think we can test this. If we can decrease this thing by 10 minutes, it will be a success, right? So this is where we start to think about what would happen after we design this thing. How do we deliver it to our engineers? How do they start to get it built, right? So we want to summarize our solution. So let's go back a little bit and let's just think about this. So we want to contextualize, we want to define, we want to ideate, refine those ideas, and then lastly, summarize them, okay? All right? Now, here's some things that we're looking for as a designer or as an interviewer. Your collaboration skills, right? How much did you interact with us? Did you talk to us at all, or did you just go off and just assume, make up a bunch of assumptions? What is your overall process like? Do you understand the need for research? Do you understand the need for data-driven decisions? Did you ask the right questions? Did you ask a bunch of questions that were totally irrelevant, or did you ask the right questions? What are your problem-solving skills like? Would you be a personality fit for the team? You know, that's a big important thing. That's something that we were looking for. So that's that. Some common mistakes. This is where everybody kind of gets hung up. Not asking enough questions. Not including the interviewers in the process. These are really big. These are really big. When you start a design solution, or you jump straight into the solution, and you didn't ask enough questions, it's a good possibility that you are actually not solving the right problem. Okay? And the only way to solve the right problem is to ask a bunch of questions and ask the right questions. Now, how do you do that in this scenario? You don't have users. Well, you treat the interviewer as the user, or you treat the interviewer as a stakeholder. Right? Do you mind if I use you as an example of can I do a mock interview with you? Of course. What do you like? You know, what is your favorite color? What are your wants and needs and desires, user? Those kinds of things. Or as a stakeholder, you know, you're the one asking me for this problem. That you're giving me this design prompt. What is the problem that you're having? You know, why are you asking me for this? What is it that you really need? You know, I found out, I'll ask a bunch of questions. I realized, like, you actually don't need this other thing. Maybe you don't need this other thing at all, right? So that's something to keep talking through the process and making sure that you're being vocal and saying, hey, listen, I'm thinking about this, but, you know, I don't know, this thing over here, blah, 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 whatever. So talking through that is really important. Getting stuck on one step. We've got these 5 steps or 6 steps or however many steps. We need to give ourselves some time to do each one and cut ourselves off when we're getting to a point where we spent too much time on each step, right? If we spent the entire hour just contextualizing the problem, we haven't started doing anything, and I haven't seen what you can actually do. What that tells me is you're very easily sidetracked, or you don't keep track of time, right? Or you aren't aware of the other things going on around you. That's the kind of stuff that I think of when you get stuck on one step. So make sure you're just time boxing yourself. You're setting a timer either on your phone, which is fine, totally fine. Pull your phone out, set a timer. Nothing wrong with that. It shows me that you're actively like aware of your constraints and you're aware of what's going on. Don't get too detailed. Again, if you're filling out a form and it's got 4 fields, you don't need to write out name, last name, username, password, whatever. Just write a line and a thing. We're going to know what you're talking about, right? It doesn't matter. That one little individual thing is not going to matter. So don't focus on that. And then lastly, don't focus on perfection. You have an hour. You are not going to make this thing perfect, right? The summary part, the last step, is where you can talk about how you might get to perfection. We can test this to make this better, right? Or we can do this other thing and make this better. I didn't get a chance to do this other thing, but I would have loved to keep going and trying this other thing, right? So don't focus on perfection. You've got an hour. And I didn't necessarily put it here, but, you know, finishing is great. It's wonderful you can finish, but if you don't finish, it's totally fine. Because at the end of the day, the end result is not necessarily what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for is how you interact with me and my team, whoever else is sitting in there, and how would you interact with us if we were to offer you a job. That's really what I care about. Okay? That makes sense? All right. And lastly, don't forget, this whole thing is completely terrifying, especially if you've never done it before. That's okay. That's why we're here. Practice, 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 practice. You can't practice this enough. We'll go through some tips and some potential tools for this when we're done, and we can give you some advice on how to practice. All right, so let's see. Before we hop into this next session where we actually do the whiteboard challenge, does anybody have any questions? I see in the chat. Can you make up a persona? Absolutely. That's wonderful. If you could do that, make up a persona, but state why I'm making this persona. Based on, you know, the hypothetical research I did, we found that, you know, Beth loves this and she's a soccer mom and likes to drive a, you know, whatever soccer moms drive. So that kind of thing, as long as you state why you're doing it and the reason why you made these assumptions to make up this persona, because essentially we are making it up. It should be reasonable, and you should have some logic behind it and explain that, right? What you're trying to show is that you're not just making decisions based on your own personal feelings, but you're making decisions based on users' needs, which hopefully is backed up in real life by some data. If it's imaginary data, in our case, that's fine. But it shows that you know that data is important, right? Any other questions? Anybody have any questions? Feel free to just speak up. You don't have to use the chat if you don't want to. Anybody? No? No, that's cool. All right, so let's see. We have until I think 3 o'clock my time, which is I'm not sure what time in the UK. That's an hour and a half. Do you guys feel like you want to hop into it, or do you want to take a break before we hop into it? I want to leave about 15, 20 minutes towards the end. So we'll give ourselves about an hour. That'll give us about 15 minutes towards the end for a wrap up. You guys feel comfortable hopping in? If you want, just put a
Let's hop in.
up.
Yeah, we can start now.
Let's start now. All right, let's start now. All right. So we're going to take a crack at it. All right. So this is a website, sharpen.design, that has just a bunch of design prompts, and we'll go through it in a second. Well, actually, I'll go through it now. You just pick digital products, physical products, whatever, and you can go and just hit refresh, and you can find a cool thing. I was going through this earlier, and I found one that was create a create an info board for a hotel in Brussels. All right, and so I gave it a hospital in Port, so you can kind of see this is the kind of stuff that you might come up with. All right, so I came up with this idea. So based on create an info board for a hotel in Brussels, this is the design prompt I came up with. A new hotel is looking for a way to give their guests more information. This hotel is in a historic district of Brussels. They're having trouble getting guests the information they need. They're looking for a way to create a better guest experience. Help this hotel provide their guests with the information they need for a great stay. All right? Does that make sense? All right. Now, here's what I'm going to do. Does anybody want to volunteer to be the lead kind of person to do this, and everybody can kind of sit back and watch? Does anybody want to offer themselves up to do this? And if no one feels comfortable, I'm happy to drive, and you guys can just sort of sit back and watch. But if somebody is interested in being a guinea pig, let me know. I'll give you a minute or 30 seconds to speak up.
I'm happy to do the challenge.
Happy to do the challenge. Who's that? I can't see who's talking.
It's Kira.
Kira. All right, cool. All right, Kira. Have you ever done this before?
No.
All right. Are you in the Miro board?
Yes, I am.
There you are. I see your arrow. Okay, cool. All right. So what I've done here, I've created a little template for you to use. We're separating these out by user wants, needs, goals, constraints, and assumptions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we're probably going to take a little bit more than the time that I specified out up here, because we're walking through this together. But what I want you to do is start to think about and ask me questions. Again, feel free to ask me questions. Treat me as if I'm a user. Treat me as if I'm the stakeholder. Start to list out the things that you know, potentially from the prompt or by asking me questions. Do we know of any constraints? Do we know what a goal is, a need, a want, an assumption? Now, before I go further, let me explain a little bit the goal, the needs, and the wants. They're similar, but they're a little bit different. I've seen people combine these. If you want to combine them, I think that's totally fine. But if you want to go at what I've got, that's totally fine too. A goal. Let's think about going to dinner. My goal is to have a nice meal. Okay, that's my goal. In order for me to have a nice meal, I need to have certain things. I need a menu. I need a chair. I need food, right? My want would be, I want a server who doesn't interrupt me while I eat, right? Or a want would be, or the converse of that would be what I don't want. I don't want rats running across the restaurant. I could have a meal if rats are coming across the restaurant. It's not a need, right? But it probably will affect my goal of having a nice meal. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so the goal would be the long-term thing. The need is something I have to have. If I don't have it, I cannot complete my goal. And a want would be just like kind of nice to have. And again, I've seen people combine these, and you can combine them, and I think that's fine. Whatever you feel comfortable doing. So that said, go ahead. Let's try to knock this out. You pick whichever one you want, and let's start from there. Read through the prompt, and again, feel free to use me as a user or a stakeholder, or however you want to get some of this information out of me.
Okay, so I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes for
Sounds
this part.
Okay.
And so the first question I have is, what are the constraints?
Okay. So you could ask me. I think in this case, I would say, what do you think the constraints are? So this is
Okay.
where start asking me questions, and I can say, and if you get stuck, I'll help you along.
Okay.
But yeah, the idea would be for, ideally you would ask me or investigate this or start to throw some stuff out there. If you feel like you get stuck, let me know, and I can throw some things out there that I came up with.
Okay. So I guess first of all, just I'm going to read the prompt again,
Yeah, for sure.
and I'm seeing the my stakeholder is going to be the hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and they're looking for ways to create a better guest experience. So one question I want to ask is, do they have an existing digital or any platform that connect them
This
with
is
the
perfect.
guests?
We do not. Now,
Uh-huh.
let me before you go further, let me just throw this out there. A lot of times, this is what most people that are doing. They have a lot of these answers in their head, and they want you to ask. They want you to get it out of them, right? So in this case, I've got a whole backstory for this hotel in my head because I've had some time to think about this. So I have a whole backstory in my head, and I'm waiting for you to get it out of me by asking me some really in-depth questions. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So we do not have a platform currently. No.
Okay. And how many who are the main guests for your hotel? So I guess who's the user?
Yeah. So we've got several different groups of people that come to our hotel. We are in a historic district in Brussels, a very beautiful city, beautiful old house built in the late 1700s. We get a lot of older people because of that. People that care a lot about history. We get a lot of honeymooners that come as well, newly married. So we've got also sometimes we've had folks who have retired and they are coming to Europe to just spend maybe a week or two because they have free time.
So, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you have a diverse group of hotel guests,
Mm-hmm.
and what kind of um, information do they look for when they
That's a good question.
wanted to book
So
your
a couple of
hotel?
different things. A lot of times we get people asking us for tours, restaurant suggestions, bars, things like that, entertainment. We also get people asking us about check-in, check-out, or check-out rather. A lot of times people ask us what time our restaurant and our bar opens and what the menu might be and things like that. So
Okay. Okay. Sounds interesting. So now I'm guessing I'm guessing the hotel mainly serve the guests in two ways. First is like all the necessary information they want, that a guest need to have, like their checkout time or like hotel hours, restaurant hours. And the second form of informations are information about local attractions and tools and like all kinds of other things. Am I correct?
that's correct.
Okay. Okay. And in the past, have any guests complained or mentioned something to you guys about like what they like and what they don't like about their experience in the hotel?
Yeah. So what happens is, we have usually two people at the front desk, and a lot of times, if users or guests want to ask a question, they'll have to come wait in line. If somebody's checking in, it might take 10, 15 minutes. So, they're like, well, I just want to know what time the thing is or whatever, and they have to sit there and wait for us to check in our guests. That's a complaint we hear quite a bit.
Okay, so I'm hearing that people want to get information as soon as possible, but the hotel is constrained because you have a lack of like employees helping the guests.
That's right.
Okay. And I guess I'm assuming now that since you want to give people new way to provide them with information, it doesn't really has to be a digital one. Like it could also be like an information board in the hotel lobby where you update it every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is this something you want to go for, or do you prefer like something that the guests can see digitally?
So I don't know what the answer is, but I will say, you know, we are a historic hotel. We have, you know, people come to us because of the history behind the hotel. It's a very old building. I don't think our guests would really want to see a giant digital board in their face as soon as they walk in. So, you know, I'm not opposed to technology, but I think that if you could do it in a subtle way, that would be great. But I don't know that I want to have, you know, holograms and all kinds of crazy stuff, you know, flashy lights and things like that. I think it would probably not fit with the decor.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm thinking there will be something that fit I guess the style and the brand of the hotel. So okay, so based on this information, I don't think I write this note in the way it's supposed to be.
Doesn't matter. It's
but
perfect.
basically I'm seeing like, so people are, I guess these two sticky point notes are more important to me. I'm gonna make them bigger. So I'm seeing they want to look for information about hotel, general information, and tourist attraction information, and they wanted to get information as soon as possible. So what the user needs are, is there anything that you want to add besides the two what we just talked about?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. And I guess I'm going to jump to the assume part.
Okay.
Cause assumption. Cause I think I got 2 more minutes. So I assume that the guests are interested to learn more about the history of the hotel, and any information would be appreciated. I'm also assume that the guests are also interested to learn more about the history or local attraction.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. And
Awesome.
then another one last assumption is that I'm assuming that digital might not be the best way to present this information, and perhaps we can provide this information in a more classic like way. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, perfect. All right. So I like this a lot. All right. So what I'm going to do real quick, let me see. I'm going to unhide this guy down here. How do I unhide it? What's going on here? I don't know why I can't unhide this. Can you guys see this? You can't see it.
No.
Why can't I unhide it? That's weird. Am I like, I can't edit this thing anymore? It's weird. My little, it went away. What? Oh, I'm in presenter mode. That's why. Okay. There we go. All right. I'm done. All right. So if you look down here, Jeremy Stickies, here's some things I came up with. And I think you're very close to what I came up with. It's very good. So I had, you know, historic hotel doesn't want anything high tech. We have a reasonable sized budget. If you would have asked, I would have told you that. No future technology that doesn't exist. So we can't, you know, like beam the data into their brains or something like that. Right. So we want to keep it kind of in the realm of possibility. Now, keep in mind, as you're doing these, you don't necessarily always have to stick with like the exact technology. You could think of something crazy and off the wall. If something is interesting and it makes sense, talk about it. You don't want to be like too crazy and like outrageous, but if the part of the idea is to kind of stand out a little bit. So if you can come up with some interesting ideas, there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think, as long as it makes sense. So here's some things I came up with. Guests expect an enjoyable stay, expect their identity is protected. So like if we were to do an app or something, I would have said that was a big important thing. Hotels want to make a profit off of partnerships. So this was something that I thought of. Perhaps we could build something where the hotel could get a cut of the revenue. If you were to book a tour through some service, the hotel could get some money. So a way to make some money that way. Some needs. Guests need information on demand. I think you kind of covered that. Guests don't want to feel lost. They want to feel empowered. They want to access information in multiple places, perhaps. Guests want to access the information. Oh, I said that. That's a duplicate. Okay. And then some assumptions. I just put, guests chose this hotel because of its historic charm. Guests don't expect historic buildings to be high tech. Guests know how to use technology. I'm making that assumption. If we were to do some kind of app, I just assume for our purposes that they would know how to use a smartphone. We can still build high-tech features if it fits within the decor. So we don't necessarily have to keep it low-tech, but it can't be, like I said, a big giant electric board or a digital board right in your face when you walk in. There'll be some way for staff to update the information, is some assumption I made, so I wouldn't have to worry about designing an interface for that. Historic hotels does not mean retirees, so it could be young people here. And most guests have smartphones. I'm just going to make that assumption because that's pretty accurate nowadays. All right, so you did great. So this is perfect. All right, so the next step, we want to start to define the problem. So we focus on only one or two going forward, but we just want to get them all out there. What are the problems that we see from your perspective, all the questions you just asked me? And again, keep in mind, you can keep asking me questions. What are some problems that you are seeing right off the top of your head based on what we've already talked about?
Yeah, so I think one problem I'm seeing is that like the guests are looking for information and they wanted to get information on demand, but the problem is the hotel might not be able to provide them the assistance whenever they need because they don't have as many employees as they want. So I'll say they have lack of employee. Do you think that's a good direction?
Yeah, I think it's great.
Okay. And I guess the second thing that I'm seeing is that because I saw whatever you wrote on the board, and I think as a historical hotel, sometimes they might have an image issue, like people assume this is for the hotel is for people who are like in the older like generation group. Yep. So they might have an image issue, or they are it might be hard to attract like young couple to
interesting. Okay, yeah.
Really?
No, I hadn't thought of that. That's good.
Yeah. So and then I'm also seeing like the information, like the way how important, like what kind of information a guest want might depends on like the purpose of their trip. So if they're going for a honeymoon, then what kind of activities they look for might be different from couples or like friends who are looking for like a graduation trip. So I'm seeing people might have different needs, like guests might have different needs and goals, depends on the reason of their stay.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll
just put it that way. And so since I have 3 problems here, do you think I should focus on 1 or 2, or should I
this is totally up to you. I like for me personally, I would love to see you come up with as many problems as you can identify. Now, moving forward, that doesn't mean we need to solve all the problems, but it's nice to see that you're coming up with a bunch. You know, what are you like? I'm asking myself, what is she missing? You know, what is she not asking me? Is there something else that because the idea is not to get all the way to the end and finish 100%, right? Because again, the idea, our job is to solve these problems. And so what we want to do is list out every problem we can think of, and then at some point we want to just start trying to solve one or two of the problems, but it's still good to just get all those ideas out there. So unless you're running out of time, I would just dump as many ideas on this board as you possibly could.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll still have some time, and I'm also seeing people's thoughts, and I'll start from this one. Yeah, I'm seeing that because people might have different needs and different goals. So obviously they might need to have, I guess, oops, sorry, I don't want to hover over someone's stickies. So I'm guessing that the problem is the guests might have different language issues. They might have language issue with the hotel.
That's
especially
true. We're in a foreign country. We're not speaking
Yeah.
English. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then maybe another thing is just on top of my mind. Then there's like the currency issue. So if the hotel like they are giving like some like package for their guests, then they might need to make sure like what's the currency and what kind of currency
So, you know,
are.
this I didn't even think about this, to be honest, but this could have been an assumption that you made. Like, I assume everyone is paying in local currency or something. But no, I agree. I mean, if you have an idea in your head that could be a solution for this problem, this could be an interesting one to solve.
Yeah.
You know, anyway, but yeah, keep going. Sorry.
And then I think another thing on top of my is like age, because there are certain like activities that people might like people from a younger generation might be more interested in than people who are in the older generation. And then I'm also thinking like they might have budget issues. Yes, this is good. I'm just so people with on different budgets might also have different needs. And
that's an interesting one. Okay.
And then I want to take a step back and going back to the problem that we just had, like because they love to also just kind of know about the hotel's general information. I think another good way is to have like maybe a problem that they might have is like the hotel is not always how do I say? So if there's an emergency and there are no stuff on the floor, then they know where to get help.
I never even thought of that. Okay. Yeah, I like that.
They want to be able to get help as well. Yeah, so I think that's a good starting point.
Okay. All right. So cool. So let me pop these that I came up with. Just thinking about this. All right. So here's some problems that I came up with. The problem is information is scarce, right? It's hard to find the information, or I have to go to somebody who I might have to wait in line for 15 minutes. So we have scarcity of information. There aren't enough employees to answer questions. So I have 2 people at the front desk, and if I have a line of 2 or 3 people, somebody's waiting, right? So we don't have enough people to answer questions. There doesn't appear to be any information in the room. We don't have any kind of way to get information to people on demand while they're in their room. They have to come down to the front desk and get the information. So is it possible the next step, you know, we could maybe solve something for that. The only people that can answer the question are at the front desk, right? That's a problem. You know, is there something that we could do to get information somewhere else so that it's not only at the front desk, another person, another thing, a device, whatever it is, right? So these are just a few things I came up with. Some other stuff on the top of my head, I'm just thinking, you know, part of the problem is there's no way to book a tour. There's no way to look at things around me. You know, stuff like that. Now, we did make the assumption that there's smartphones, and, you know, you can make the case that you could just use your smartphone for that, but for our purposes, let's just assume people aren't looking at their smartphones for that, right? So that could also be an assumption that you could make too, if you think about it. Like, people will look on Yelp or whatever before they ask. So I don't know. That's just something, you know, maybe it complicates our work. So I think for our purposes here, though, I think I would say when it comes to things like that, don't make it harder on yourself, right? So if your job here is to design something, don't make it so you can't design something. Does that make sense? Maybe make an assumption that Yelp doesn't work in Brussels, right? There's no great app to check this stuff. That could be an assumption that you make, because at the end of the day, if you're going to design something, you don't want to limit yourself. You don't want to make this thing harder, more stressful on you. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
All right. And again, it's important to state those assumptions, though. As we go through this, you say, all right, I'm designing this thing. I know that Yelp exists, but blah, blah, blah. I made this assumption that something or other. It's important to just state those things as you progress through this and just be very vocal about it, right? Be very vocal. Don't keep any ideas in your head. I think that's the biggest important thing. All right. Anybody else out there? Let's see other stuff people. We got what device do we use to pass across the information? That's a great problem to answer. How do we ensure guest safety? That's great. Like, how do we ensure guests, you know, personal information? Some of these, when we ask ourselves these questions, we're going to look at in the next phase, the how might we's, right? That one, how do we ensure guest safety, is very much how might we ensure guest safety, which we can think about in the next step. There are budget issues. That's certainly a problem. People with different money, you know, or different levels of I don't know, income might expect certain services, some kind of thing. They want some special if you're in the suite versus the shared bathroom room or something, right? So that's that. Okay, good, awesome. All right, great. So the next step, ideate through solutions. So what we want to do here, we want to take these problems that we've identified and ask ourselves, how might we solve for it? Okay. So how might we solve this, or how might we solve that? We want to list out those potential solutions. Put them all out there again, and then from the next step, we're going to pick one or two of these that we think have the most interest, maybe the most interesting for us to design, and then we'll start actually sketching out ideas after this step. But for now, let's start to throw out all these potential solutions. Now, if anyone's familiar with the how might we, this is a question that's, you know, we ask as like design thinking. How might we blah, 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 right? So I'll help you out. I'll give you one. The question about, you know, what was it? Ensure guest or privacy. Let's see. How might we ensure guests' privacy if we were to design an app? How might we ensure guest privacy, right? How might we enable the guest to do this? How might we give the guest that? How might we solve for this? Okay, and that we ask that question, it kind of just helps us like think outside the box a little bit, you know. Let's think about this. Let's think about that. If we were to do anything, how would we do it? Right? All right. So how do you feel? Kira, you ready? You want to start knocking this next one out?
Yes.
How might we solve some of these problems that we identified?
Okay. So the first problem I identify is the lack of stuff. So for this issue, I would say, how might we make sure that hotel guests can find help when there's no employee available.
Okay.
When there's no employee that are currently available. And on top of my head, I wanna say maybe could be like a chat bot but that might be too much trouble. But I'm just throwing idea out, or there can be like an FAQ list that's like pre-generated by the hotel. So the guests can always refer to the list. And then I'm also, oops, sorry, I don't want to step into someone's note. Just go up.
Oh, sorry, I'm on your stuff now.
Yeah, and then maybe another is to have like a number or for people to test if they're going and like they really wanna get an answer. Okay. And now I'm going to say the second problem I identify is the image issues of the hotel. So this is a historical hotel, so people might associate historical hotels with like certain age group. So, and then people might not think, how might we attract younger hotel guests to participate in like events or like local attraction. Okay. And then the last problem I identify is that guests has different needs based on the reasons of their stay. So I'll say, how might we accommodate different hotel guest needs based on their reason of stay and like budget, current language, and etc. So I think there's a lot more. Like I think this issue could be a lot more complicated than I expect.
I think you can break this one up. Yeah, to me this would be like, how might we cater to different income levels or budgets? How might we cater to honeymooners? How might we cater to anniversary, whatever, because each of those could maybe have some kind of thing. But then you could say, how might we cater to special events in general? And that could then be some form that you fill out, right? If I've seen places I've made reservations before, and they ask, is there something special? And they might have like a bottle of champagne waiting or something like that.
Yeah.
Not to give too much away, I guess. But, okay, so this is good. So a couple that I came up with, just based on some problems that I came over here. How might we provide info without high tech in their face, right? Keeping in mind that high tech is not a bad thing. We just don't want it in their face. And that's a very nuanced question. How might we provide information on demand? How might we increase awareness of restaurant hours? How might we make apps sign up easier if we were to build an app? Again, keeping in mind that whole creating an account, personal information, things like that. How might we prioritize hotel partnerships, right? How might we add a personalized experience? So these are just a few examples that I came up with. And I don't know if anyone else, let's see. Information on accepted currencies, two-way authentication, welcome packs or tablets in the room for key information. Yep. All right. So anyway, so from here, what we want to do is take some of these ideas that we've come up with and start to refine them. Now, one thing where I really like this challenge is it could go in different ways. It could be a physical experience that you're designing. Okay. It could be a digital experience. It could be a hybrid. It could be a combination of both. So in this case, I don't want to steer you in the direction because, the idea is I want you to try to do this, but keep in mind that the answer is not always an app. Okay? The answer is not always a smartphone app. The answer is not always an app. The answer could very well be a physical thing. And as a UX designer, if you're trying to solve a problem, a real world problem, by just throwing an app at it, might not be the right solution. It might not be the right solution at all. So, part of what I'm investigating here is, and the reason why I like this challenge is I want to see where the person that I'm interviewing goes. Do they treat every problem like an app can fix it? Or do they think outside the app, right? And say, well, I'll be honest, I don't know if an app would fix any of this. How useful would an app really be here? Or there might be some really compelling reason to build an app. I don't know. It all depends. It's up to you. So in this case, you could go multiple ways, I think. And that's one of the reasons why I really like this. Anyway, somebody just asked the question, do we always need to start with how might we, or just go straight to the solution? The reason why I like how might we is it doesn't actually give you a solution. It's asking a question. How might we increase user something? How might we decrease turnaround time? How might we improve the guest checkout experience? That is not a solution necessarily. I know it says ideate through solutions, but what it is here, what you're actually doing is, think about this. Let's say we're designing an app. How might we increase or how might we decrease the checkout steps? Those ideas all become potentially a feature in your application, right? Or a physical thing that you're going to build. So it's not necessarily like, some specific thing. Like I saw somebody threw out like, a book in the room or something, or a tablet in the room. That's not necessarily asking the right question. Like, is that actually solving a problem? It's just saying, I could say, like slippers on the floor. That's a solution, but what is the problem that the slippers on the floor? How might we make guests' feet warm? Like how might we keep guests' feet warm and toasty? The answer could be multiple things. It might not be slippers. It might be a heated floor. It might be, carpet. It might be a million different things. The solution, and maybe I should fix this. Ideate through ideas or something. But I did put solutions there. But, ideate through these potential feature sets or potential things, right? Does that make sense? So if we say, guests are always complaining that they're chilly, right? Nobody's going to come out and say, guests are always complaining because they're chilly because their feet are cold. That's our job, is to ask, well, why are the guests' cold all the time? It might be in any number of things, but we might investigate and find out, everybody's complaining ultimately, like, they're just, their feet are cold and the floor is cold and everything else, So like, is it to give them carpet? Is it to give them slippers? Is it to warm up the tile floor? Does that make sense? So in that case, you're asking how might we, more because we don't necessarily have a solution yet, I guess. Does that answer your question, Toki? All right. So anyway, does that make sense? The whole how might we thing, does that make sense for everybody out there? This is kind of like a design thinking IDEO process, sort of how might we this. That's kind of where that came from. All right. So now the next step, we want to start refining some of these problems. So this is where we start to say, all right, how might we keep the guests' feet warm, right? That is that could be any number of things, any number of solutions, right? I'm going to change this because the more I'm thinking about this, I don't like ideate through solutions. Anyway, for this next step, you might say, how might we, grab the how might we keep the guests' feet warm, and we might say, I really like the slipper idea. I think the slipper idea has a lot of value. Let's design a really cool pair of slippers, right? So that's where we're going to take one of these, something that we think has the most potential for us to maybe show off some of our design skills. You don't want to, in this case, you want to think about like, what's something that I can like design that'll have an impact on the interviewer. What might I design that like they'll remember me? Did you have like a really cool idea for one of these here that you could take and create something really impactful, really meaningful, really like memorable? Somebody's hotel branded slippers are a thing. Yeah, because guests' feet are cold. Exactly. Somebody else already asked that question. How might we keep our guest feet warm? So anyway, so that's where we're going with this next step. Does that make sense, Kira?
Yes.
Cool. All right. So with that said, I will let you take it away. And I've got some ideas, but I want you to kind of go.
All right. Just I guess on top of my head, one problem that really stand out to me was like, how might we cater to guests with special events?
Okay.
So, this issue for me it sort of stand out to me because I think it could mean a lot of things for people, for like guests, hotel guests. Like sometimes they travel maybe for a special occasion or they travel to celebrate something. So I think it will be a way like to really like give like give the guests a memorable experience. So I say I'll go with that. And I'm gonna just drop the sticky there. And so from there, I think one of I'm thinking about a board,
Okay.
but like a physical board that could be placed in the hotel lobby every morning by the guests, and then there on the board there might be some like information about what are the upcoming like events around the city, and here are some of our recommendations based on your reason of stay. So it's like I'm thinking about something like when you go to a bookstore, sometimes you see like what's the top 10 like books, and then there's like different categories. Like if you're interested in fictional movie, here fictional novel, here's the list we recommend you. And if you're interested in like other thing, then here's a list for you. So I was thinking that concept in my head, but I
So with this, this is going to be weird because it's virtual and we're not in a real thing. But everything you just said, what I would love, I want to see you with the marker drawing this out. Right now, in this case, we have limited tools, but like I'm going to just kind of grab the thing and you could start talking about how that and like whatever and you could have like the weather or something, and this could be a digital thing maybe, I don't know, we said we don't want it to be in your face. We don't know how big this thing is. Could be a physical thing, could be something that they actually come out and by the way, my drawing on this whiteboard thing is terrible skills, but you get the idea. So like that's what I want to see. You could in this case that's terrible, I'm going to delete it, but you could use the shapes here and start to sketch some stuff out. Or you could even, if you want to share your screen and you want to like draw something and put it out, that's fine too. And I would encourage everybody at home, if you have a notebook or something and you want to sketch some stuff out, that could be something that you guys try to do. So keep talking though. I love how you're talking and you're talking us through this.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna start sketching some of my idea. So I'll say this is a number 1 board, and I'm thinking this board could be somewhere like in the hotel lobby, depending on the space. And this is just early prototype, so I'm gonna assume we have the space to put this board in the hotel.
That's a good assumption to make. I assume we have the space.
And I'll say the day and the time will be here, so people okay. And then I personally would love to see some columns. Oh, how do I draw a column?
There's a line, that little arrow. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. So yeah, I like. Okay, I'll probably. Oh.
And remember, this is virtual, and even on a whiteboard challenge, nobody expects us to be super perfect. But so don't fret about that too much. Don't worry about that too much.
Yeah. So I wanna. maybe put it like as a list wheel. So here is like list 1, list 2, list 3, list 4, and under each list, I was thinking there's like those little car here, and each car obviously will have whatever are going on, like maybe in the week, like maybe there's a local music festivals going on. So I'll say, okay. And then there will be like day, time, and like if it applies, like any useful information, like if it applies. And then maybe I'll say like for this is like, oh, what happened? I'll say this is for those who are here for the music. Maybe so this is like the subheading of this column.
Okay.
And here are like a list of recommendation. So I think it will go like this, and you know, for and then obviously it will be sort of repeat for each part, and maybe on the right I'll just say for family, like, okay, maybe this is for couples, I don't know.
So one thing that you haven't done yet, Kira, I would encourage you to try to do is use me as if I'm a user and ask, do some potential user interviews. Can I treat you like a user, and you can ask me some questions, and maybe I can give you some input on what I might want to see there.
Yeah. Okay. So
now you don't have. This could be this step. It could be in a previous step. It could be in the how might we step. But feel free to do that. I would encourage you to do that kind of stuff.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask, for example, if you're a user, then what kind of, do you like the way like the information was categorized, or do you prefer it to be categorized by different kinds of way?
For me personally, I don't. I mean, I guess I'll put since I'm family, I got 2 kids, a wife and kid. I'm probably traveling with them. I don't know. Seeing all that stuff for the couples and for all the newlyweds, I'm never gonna go to that music festival. It kind of makes me sad that I see all that stuff and I can't go to it.
Oh.
Makes me jealous.
Okay, so that's a good point. I think we want this to be more like accessible, so everyone can choose, depends on their like what kind of mood they're on. Maybe we can change that. So instead of categorize them as like this is for couple, this is for friends and family, I'll say maybe this is for if you are interested in movies, or I don't know. I don't want to like make it super stereotypical. Maybe I'll move away from this design, and I'll ask, as a hotel guest, what kind of information do you think is more important to you, like in terms of like the general hotel information?
Yeah. So, well, obviously, I'm with my kids, and I need to know what time breakfast and stuff is in the morning. It'd be great to have a simple way to reserve a table. Go up if it's not a buffet or something. making reservations would be great somehow. You know, that would be good. I'd also love to know like what kid-friendly stuff there is to do around Brussels. Maybe some museums and stuff that are kid-friendly. Maybe like you know, it'd be cool to go see the, you know, some old castles or some old historic buildings around town, things like that. Parks would be fun, you know, if I could see where that was. Public transportation to get around. I need to know how to get there. I've never been to Brussels before, so for me, I would have no clue how to get around.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I think these are super interesting. So I think for the last thing you say, like you want to know how to get around. So I think maybe a good way is to put a little map here. So, and on the map, you can obviously have a place like where I am. So that way that might probably help you to navigate. And then you mentioned you want to see like when is the breakfast available and like how to reserve the table. And so I think those kind of information could also go on the board. And then for the rest of the contents on the board, I don't think that's a really good way to show. So I'm gonna how do I say? I'm gonna just move away from the design, and I'm going to
And it's okay, by the way. I mean, you can always iterate on this. It's not like you have to keep going. If you get to a point and you say, oh, you know, I don't know if this is gonna work, scrap it. That's fine. You know, explain why you're scrapping it. Explain why you think it's not working. I think that's a big part of, you know, UX design is not getting tied to your initial idea, right? A lot of times our initial idea is not the best idea. So just because you had it doesn't mean you need to keep going with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna work just because I don't want people to feel like they're excluded from certain events just because they're not a couple or they're not traveling with their family, so they will be excluded.
Well, also too, I mean, you think about it, some families would take their kids to a music festival.
Yeah.
You know, some families would do things other families would never do. You know, some people would travel across to another continent with their kids. Some people would never think of doing that. So,
yeah.
Some people are coming
exactly.
from France, which is close to Brussels. So, anyway.
So.
If you're getting stuck, let me know. I don't want to like put you on the spot.
I think I'm kind of like I'm stuck because my initial idea was to like have a list of recommended events so people can check that out and see if that's
Well, so here's some ideas I came up with. So a few things. One, we want to have stuff in different places, multiple places, right? To me, that could mean some kind of kiosk somewhere in the front that's got maybe pamphlets for stuff. You've probably seen that at hotels all the time. It could be a little booklet in the room. A lot of hotels do that already. That's something pretty common. You know, you could also do the thing I thought of immediately when I thought of historic hotel. I thought old historic fancy hotel, personal concierge. You know, we don't have enough people. I never once said anything about budgets were a constraint. So could we hire a concierge? Could we hire a concierge for each floor? Could we have for some of the suites a personal concierge, somebody who is there to do all that stuff for you at the drop of a hat? For the fancy people who have the money to spend on the suite, you know, the presidential suite, you get your own personal concierge. You know, it could be somebody at the bottom. I also thought of something like an app, right? I want to take this with me and I want to go out and, you know, let's make the assumption that Yelp doesn't exist in Brussels. Some kind of personalized thing where I could go and book a tour and I could get directions from the app. I could book a tour through the app and the hotel would get a commission. You know, that kind of thing, an interactive thing with the menu, something like that that's easy to update. I also thought about a TV screen in the room. Most of the rooms nowadays have TVs. You could have a channel that has this information that's just kind of ongoing. if you want to get crazy and out there, I could imagine some kind of like virtual assistant in the room that's like a speaker or something that you could talk to and ask and book things for you. Also, another option, like this is kind of interesting. I don't know if this would be too high tech, but you could have like that board that you're talking about. Instead of it's like a giant board, it could be in a mirror. And when I walk up to the mirror, it turns on. So when I'm sitting across the room, I don't see it, and it looks like a nice late 17th century hotel lobby or whatever we said the thing was built, 18th century. But it doesn't. It activates upon approach, so it's got some kind of sensor in it that notifies when I'm there, and then that pops up, and it could be interactive, and it can ask me what I want to do. That kind of technology exists. So those are just some ideas that I had. As far as like creating an account or having an app, the thing that I would be very wary of is this is a one-time use app. I will never use this app again. I don't want to create an account. I don't want the account, my information stored in this system for somebody to go. We said before, how might we protect users' data, right? The simple way to do that is to not store it at all. So how would you create an app? How might we create an app without having to have a user log in? So in that case, there could be a QR code somewhere in the room. I scan it and it just pre-populates it with some information, generic information about my room. And then when I'm ready to check out, I could book a tour and have it build on my room, right? Like those kinds of things. So, all through an app without ever having to create an account, signing in with personal information. It doesn't store my credit card. All that stuff just gets synced back to the hotel database, and it's not stored within an app. So those are just some sort of ideas that I kind of had. To be honest, I didn't sketch anything out, but I did have I did have extra time to think about a lot of this, more than an hour that you guys did. But I'm curious, anybody else out there come up with any other interesting things you guys want to share? Anybody else sketch something on a notebook that they want to maybe turn their camera on and present?
I think I had an idea originally was to like create like a newsletter the moment like the guests check in. So the newsletter could serve as like a travel, like a curated travel guide for the person, and it will be more customized because sometimes when you book a room, like you sometimes you specify what's the reason of your stay. So maybe that's another way.
I love that. See, that's an interesting idea. So I haven't seen that in a lot of hotels, but that could be something where this is an interesting thing, like sort of a progressive disclosure, right? I give you a little bit of information over time, and then later you can do something with it. So maybe you've talked to somebody about booking a hotel. Maybe you went through a travel agent. Maybe you did some stuff. Maybe you booked online, and through that process, we asked you some questions, and we found out that you like this and you like that, and what's your ideal stay like, and whatever. And then there could be some printout that you get. I love that idea. That has some stuff. It could have the information about the hotel, check in, check out, room. Maybe the QR code could be on that sheet to download something. That could have special instructions if we know you're a honeymoon, right? If you do that, we have a special package for you with the honeymoon. Then you could maybe do something nice with their room and put like a bottle of champagne in their room or something. So in this case, like again, it's not all digital. There could certainly be some digital aspects of this, but again, it's one of those things where as UX designer, a lot of people, if they, especially they're designing apps, they'll always go to some like a mobile app first. That'd be like the first thing they think of. We need a mobile app. Well, how does that mobile app actually help our guests? And think about that. How might we do these things? How might this mobile app actually help them in some way? And what would be the constraints there? Things that they're wary of. What are we worried about? And how can we avoid those and account for those in our design? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I like that newsletter. See, that would have been a cool thing to explore. Is there a reason why you didn't explore that one? I'm curious. What made you apprehensive about that?
I guess I was hesitant because newsletter, like creating the newsletter is maybe like it's a more like a manual work for every individual instead of having like a big board out there. So it's like a once for all solution. And I want to go for the board solution because I thought this will be tangible in like the given time. Versus if it's newsletter, I have to think of the contents or like how do I customize, like how do I make this customizable?
Oh,
So
yeah.
that
Well,
was why.
I see. In that case, though, that's your job is to answer those questions, right? Where can we get that information from? What would the newsletter? What information would be on this piece of paper? How would we get that information? What information would the user find valuable, and how would that enhance their stay, right? And so then that's where you make the assumption. I am making the assumption that we are getting this data from some previous touch point with a customer, with a guest, right? They've given us this information. And then you could always have, what's the default state if we have no information? It could just be, and if it's customized, if it's dynamically generated, there is no manual process. It's based off of something. Maybe there's some upcoming events everybody sees, special events. So it's like Christmas time, everybody gets the Christmas stuff or something, right? Or Easter, whatever. There's an art market, a Christmas market, that could be on there. But if they are honeymooners, maybe we offer them like the romantic, corner table. Call here for special arrangements or something, and do that. Provide this code when you again, we're partnering with. Remember, we said we might partner with. So there's like all these things are kind of connected, right? And as UX designers, that's something like where it's our job to kind of think about. So how do we connect those digital experiences with the real world? That's something to think about. Again, not everything is just simply, a digital thing. Okay, so we. Anybody else have any thoughts before we move on to the last step? We're running.
Can you hear me?
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I came up with an idea. I would like to share it.
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
So it's going to be part of like the welcome package. It will be like a pamphlet that, categorizes a list of appropriate things to do for kids and adults.
Okay.
So it's a pamphlet that it has a kids section where they have a list of fun things to do during the day, during their duration of stay, and then for the adults as well. So yeah,
Did you design something? Did you want to show it?
Yeah, but it's quite ugly, but okay, let me just
That's okay.
let me just show this.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll stop sharing. You can share your screen.
Okay. Oh, you disabled screen sharing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I'm not able to share my screen because Jeremy disabled screen sharing. I don't think I can share my screen.
Jeremy, you're muted.
Oh, there we go. All right. I don't know how to let you share a screen. Let's see. Allow. I don't know how to stop video, spotlight for everybody, allow screen share. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to allow people to do that.
I think it's under the screen share option. There's a second option, allow draw something.
Oh, advanced sharing options. Who can share? All participants. There we go.
Okay.
There you go.
So yeah, something like this.
Okay.
Have like the kids section with like fun images, but then a list of to do things. Then for the adult section, just like a simple pamphlet.
Okay. Yeah. So here's the trick with when you're presenting this is to explain, because this and because we are, our research shows that the kids want to see something or the parents want this, then this is why I put this here, and this is why this is there. This is why I left this off. Our research showed us that, I don't know. Again, we don't have time to do real research in this hour, but it's all about just making those assumptions and declaring the assumptions. So, I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like, based on the research that we did, children want to see this, or adults like to see this, and the kids something or other, right? That makes sense?
Yeah.
So again, we don't have the time to do the research itself, but we can pretend as if we did the research and use that hypothetical research data to drive the decisions that we make, because our everything that we design should be based on some data to back it up. It's not, I like blue, so I'm going to make this thing blue. It's, our research shows that our guests between the ages of blah 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 like blue, and blue encourages them to purchase stuff, right? That's the reason why this is blue. It has nothing to do with any other reason. It's not because I like blue and you like purple and we had a fight and I won, right? It's because blue was a driving force behind something.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's all. As you're explaining it, just sort of explain why, like, I'm doing this because of this and blah 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 blah. All right, cool. All right. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen again. And
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. What you got?
Okay, now to what extent are your own personal experiences or observations just made in life going to be valid? Because in an exercise like this, that was my first go-to. I started thinking about what happens when I travel somewhere, and then I live in one of the most touristy cities on earth, and I'm just observing tourists. Fortunately or unfortunately, not so much now, but I've just been kind of watching what they do and seeing how they behave, and
perfectly
seeing what they,
as long as you state that, right? So if you say, in my observation, if I were a user, I would want to see this. But even then, a lot of times it's not about what we want; it's about what
because I'm a weird user, so it's
well, there you go. So
discount I already discount what I want. It's just kind of what I see people going for, and the most popular things.
Yeah, in this exercise, I would always include the interviewer and ask them to be a user, because they're going to have information in their head that they have probably set up this thing, and they're really hoping you ask a question so that they can give you the answer, right?
That's probably the most important thing to remember.
Yeah, I think it's the engagement back and forth. Now, that said, it's possible. I mean, everybody's different, and they might tell you, I don't know, well, what do you think? I mean, I don't know why they would do that. For me personally, when I do this, I love pretending like I'm a user. I've got like a whole list. Like I said, I have a whole backstory for this hotel in Brussels that like I could have told you about if you had asked. So those kinds of things will definitely play into how you you design this final outcome, or this potential solution. All right. So this last step here, the summarize. So this is where we started to do a little bit of this. And Kira, you did a good job of explaining why you didn't go with one solution or another. This is where you would want to do that. So in the last 5 minutes, you're not really spending a lot of time, but this is talking about why, just redeclaring the decisions that we made, assumptions that we made, and why we think the decisions that we made are correct. Or it could even be, I started down this path with the board here, and I just decided, I didn't like that. I felt like that wasn't right. And, we changed our mind and did something else, and we went with the newsletter approach, or we went with this custom printout when you check in. That's the kind of stuff where you would talk about it here. The other thing that's really important from here, how would you actually build this thing? Right? This is something a lot of UX designers never think about. How do you get the thing that you're building or thing that you're designing actually built? How would you work with the engineering team? Right? How would you work with them on a regular basis to get something out there in the real world? A lot of people would just be like, I'm designing a thing, throw it over the fence and expect them to build it. Pixel perfect. Guess what? That is never going to happen. So, how can you work with the engineering team? The other one was, what kind of success metrics would you be looking for here? How would you actually make sure that this board that we designed is delivering value, right? Maybe there's a survey, right? Maybe from past experience, you did a survey in the past about guest experience, and they constantly say, oh, it's taking me 15, 20 minutes just to find out what time the stupid bar opens. Like, if you keep doing that survey and you realize, you find out nobody's complaining about that anymore, it's probably a success. Those are kinds of things you think about. What other metrics could you use? Is there an NPS score? Is there something else? Is there a survey you'd want to do? Is there a follow-up? Is there something? I don't know. What kind of thing would you do to follow up to make sure that this was actually the right thing? Because again, this is only a success if we're designing and solving for the right problem, right? Anyway, all right. So, we've got about 15 minutes left. I want to leave some time for questions. Please feel free to just unmute and ask questions. Kira, I think you did a wonderful job. This was your first time doing this?
Yes, this is.
I think you did great. I think you did really well. I think the only thing I would say is just, ask questions, ask the interviewer to be part of this process, get their input, ask their thoughts, use them as if they're a user, use them as if they're a stakeholder, and you'll get so much information out of them. This thing will just become like just common sense, So I think that's the thing. The other thing I would say here is just practice, and you'll get better at this. So Kira, you did wonderful. Keep it up. You did good. All right. Any questions? Anybody out there have any thoughts, concerns, questions?
Hi, Jeremy. I want to ask a question.
Sure.
So, okay, I read something on accessibility and how like important it is. So, is it important to make mention of why a certain, let's say, design solution would be the right choice based off of the accessibility aspect?
That's a good question. It all depends on what type of accessibility you're talking about. This could be a constraint. You can ask and say, what are we designing for? Is accessibility important for this user group? What type of accessibility? Hearing accessibility, physical accessibility, visual accessibility, learning accessibility. So when we say accessibility, it could mean a lot of things.
Yeah.
That's an important question to ask. How important is accessibility for you? We're making the assumption that we don't have to design for this particular thing because we have an hour. Or I could say accessibility is my number one priority. If accessibility is the number one priority, that could change quite dramatically how you're designing this thing. So that's important to ask. Do we have to take some if you're in Europe and, I don't know, European laws versus American laws, is there some European law that if you don't do this, there's a fine, right? That's something that you need to take into account, and that could change the potential solution.
Yeah, okay, because when Kira was designing the board, I was thinking to myself, what of like blind users, low vision users, like they'll be at a disadvantage because they can't see your information. So what other alternative could we, design that will cater to that target audience?
That's a great thing to keep in mind. That's a great question to ask and a great thing to talk about as you're designing through this.
Okay.
And you're right, we ignored that completely. We didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
But that's something I think, again, that accessibility thing is becoming more and more important. And I think asking those types of questions will probably make you stand out versus a lot of people who will just ignore that question. That could be a key differentiator when it comes time to decide, am I going to pick you or this other person? Well, this one, they asked me a lot about accessibility. That was really important. I like that a lot. This other person, they didn't even ask. Great question.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Hello.
What you got?
Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it okay if we can export the board?
Yeah, absolutely.
For
Please
future
do.
usage?
Please do. Yeah, I think if you go to Miro and you copy it, you have to make sure you copy it to your project and not just copy it within my project. But you can copy it outside and use it as a template. Yeah, please feel free to do that. Yeah,
All right,
share
thank you.
this, modify it however you need. If you do a virtual whiteboard challenge, use this for your next interview. Please
All
feel
right,
free
thanks.
to. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if you run into trouble doing that, let me know, and I can maybe try to help you a little bit, and maybe even post directions on how to do it. I'm pretty sure there's a way to do it, but should be possible. I don't know. If you run into trouble, let me know. All right. Anybody else have any concerns? Anything you're like super terrified about doing this, or any kind of questions, things you maybe you're worried about?
I think for me, when I was doing this challenge, I think initially I saw the prompt, and I was like, I feel like I need to design a holistic experience for the hotel, because the prompt said that the hotel want to have certain things. But as we talk, we sort of narrow it down to like a really small aspect of the problem. So I'm wondering, like in a whiteboarding challenge section, is it okay like to narrow this problem to such a small piece of like part of the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what you have to do, really. Because if you try to do all of it in an hour, you're never going to have time to do all those things. So the reason why I like the how might we section is it shows that you're thinking about all these things, right? All those little things that you're talking about are, how might we do this? How might we do that? How might we do this? We have a million things we want to solve, but we have an hour and actually only have 25 minutes to design that solution. So that's where we pick that one interesting one, that one unique one, that one where I think I can show off some skills, maybe a dashboard, maybe something like that. I don't know. Something where I can show off some data viz stuff, some cool things happening. That is where I would pick one of those interesting things and then say, I'm going to focus on this one. All these other ones are really important. This is one small aspect of it, but for the sake of time, I have to pick one. Right? And saying that out loud, like nobody would expect that would be the only thing. If this hotel, obviously this hotel has not thought, I mean, very easily they could have just printed out some cards and put them in the room or put the hours up next to the restaurant, right? They obviously didn't do that. Those could be solutions. So put the hours up on the restaurant. Put the information cards in the hotel room. Those are very simple things. And so you might not need to design that, but it makes it known that you're thinking about those things, right?
Gotcha.
All right. Who else? We've had some quiet people out there. Any quiet folks got any thoughts? I'm curious what you guys think. We've got about 10 minutes.
I'll ask a question.
What's that?
I'll ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So during the contextualize stage, I see we were focused more on like the users, which is like our goal. But then I'm thinking, why didn't we mention something about like the stakeholders? So before starting this, we could have said, after having the interview with the stakeholders, because we also need to know what the stakeholders feel.
Yeah.
I'm asked, like, is it important to make mention of stakeholders before jumping?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's the part of, your job is to take those concerns into account. So, it could be that the users want a million things, but the stakeholders can only really focus on one, right? And if you don't ask me the one that I care about, you might be designing the wrong problem.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where down here, one of the ones the hotel wants to make a profit off of the partnerships, right? So that was one. And you're right. I did focus a lot on the guests, and you could have probably dug quite a bit into the guests, or the staff, and what do the staff need. What's wrong with the staff? The staff don't have enough time to do this. The staff are bogged down with people checking in. The staff would love to not have to be answering questions a million times a day about what time the bar opens. So those are definitely things that that I think are absolutely critical to think about for sure. And we did think a little bit. We don't want to have the big tech in the lobby and all that stuff. But yeah, you're right. The stakeholders. That's something that I would have been, personally for me, if I were running this interview and I had in my head, I have this historic hotel, no big info boards, digital boards with lights and flashing and everything else. And the first thing you did, you never asked me about it, but the first thing you designed was a big flashy board, a digital board. It would have been the wrong solution, because that's not what I wanted. I didn't want that, right? I have this historic hotel. So it's really important to engage, and that's again where I say, like, pretend like you're or ask to pretend as if they're the user, but also ask to pretend as if there's a stakeholder and ask them, the 5 whys. Why? You know, why do you need this? Why do you need that? What's the problem? Why can't you hire more people? Can you hire more people? You know, what's your budget like? You know, those kinds of things. All right, cool. All right, guys. So one last thing I want to show real quick. Can you guys see this this screen, sharpen.design? So this is where I got this prompt from. You can go in here, you can select the various prompts, experimental, digital products, and you can just hit refresh. You know, a new product for a casual restaurant in the UK. Design a watch OS app for a magic shop and finish by this weekend. Design a login page for Starbucks. I got this one from, it was like design an info board for a hotel in Brussels. That's where I got this from. So if you keep hitting refresh, you might find something like that. So this is a cool little way to just practice. You could just click refresh until you find one that you find interesting. If you have other friends that are designers, get a bottle of wine or a 6-pack of beer on a Friday night and just make this into a drinking game. Every time you come up with a sticky, you drink or something. This is where you're going to get more comfortable doing this. The thing with this is that the more comfortable you are, the more practice you have, the more fun you'll have with it, the less nervous you will be, the more you'll be yourself, and you'll just engage with the interviewer, and you'll have a good time doing it. And hopefully you guys build up a great rapport together, and they hire you because they think you're a great person to work with. And it doesn't necessarily matter if you had the best ideas. I think personally, I like to hire for personality fit over skill set, because I think you can always train skill set. Keep in mind, that's not everybody, that's me. But that's kind of what I'm looking for. The other thing that I really want to highlight is part of this exercise is for you to interview the interviewer. Okay? How do they treat you? Are they nice to you? Are they like friendly to you, or are they blowing you off? Are they like getting annoyed with you because you're asking so many questions? I don't know. It all depends on the company, but chances are good the people interviewing you will be the people that you're working with. How do they treat you? Do you feel like you'd want to work with those people? Or do you feel like they would be total jerks and you would be miserable? So keep that in mind. And I feel like when you change the script a little bit and you realize that you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, it puts a lot of control back into your court. And I think personally makes this whole thing a little bit less nerve-wracking, right? So keep that in mind. You're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. It gives you back a little bit of control. And, if you don't like them, don't work there. Don't accept an offer. So that's the one thing I think a lot of people kind of ignore. They get really nervous because they think they're in the spotlight, but the interviewer is in the spotlight too. So anyway, so that's that. We got about 5 minutes left or so. Leke, you want to mention anything? Are you on, Leke? Is Leke on?
Yeah, I am on. Sorry.
Hey, what's up, man?
How's it going?
Good.
You want to wrap up or?
Yeah, I think we're done. I think we're good. I'll figure out how to maybe, I don't know. Can we send out like a follow-up email to people who signed up and send them the Miro board link and stuff to? Yeah,
we can. So what I could do, I could share some information with people first thing tomorrow morning, for the people that sign up. So your presentation and the link to the Miro board, if that's okay with you.
Sure, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, first of all, Jeremy, for hosting an amazing event. I could tell that people have been quite engaged, a lot of questions asked. Thank you, Kira, as well, for throwing yourself into the deep end and getting involved in the exercise. I hope you guys have enjoyed that. So massive thank you for joining us in this event. I will speak to Jeremy because I think this is quite useful and maybe something that we can do regularly. Maybe once a month we'll have something similar and we'll look for different team for people to jump on board on. We'll be opening up the application for the July program soon, so keep an eye on that for people that are interested to join the cohort. For people that are already part of Black Valley, reach out to Jeremy himself if you have any follow-up question around the whiteboard challenge and what that looks like. This recording would also be available on our YouTube channel, and that will be shared, if not tomorrow, before the end of the week. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. You guys did great. I want to say again, if anyone is interested in following up with me, find me on LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to go over this with you guys if we have time to do that. And again, remember what I said, practice, practice, practice. I know it's terrifying. It gets easier over time, but thanks for joining us today. And I